You won't believe what I saw when I looked out my window that Saturday morning. Tents. Loud music. Smoke rising from a barbecue pit. A whole group of strangers partying on my private lake lot like it was a public festival ground. My land, my peaceful retreat that I had bought to escape the noise of the city, had suddenly turned into someone else's party zone without permission or respect. At first, I thought it might be a mistake. Maybe someone got lost or accidentally wandered over from another property. But the closer I looked, the more obvious it became, this wasn't a random mistake. This was planned. There were folding chairs set up in a circle, coolers stuffed with drinks, bags of chips and plastic cups scattered across the grass, and a huge Bluetooth speaker blasting music loud enough to shake the trees. There was even a hand-painted sign stuck into the ground that said, "Welcome campers." That's when I knew this wasn't some innocent accident. This was trespassing, clear and bold. I was shocked, then angry. But when I saw who was leading the group, that anger turned white-hot. There she was, Karen. The HOA queen herself, sipping from a glittery wine tumbler and giving orders like she owned the place. She wasn't even trying to hide it. She stood in the middle of my land like it belonged to her, pointing out where to set up tents, helping a couple unload gear from their SUV, and even laughing loudly when someone asked if they should worry about the owner showing up. That's when I walked down there. I didn't shout, didn't come in swinging. I just calmly approached and asked, "Excuse me, can someone tell me why you're all camped out on my lake lot?" Karen didn't even flinch. She turned around slowly, as if I had interrupted her spa day, and said, "Oh, hi. Yeah, we're just having a little weekend getaway. The lot's been empty forever, so we figured it was okay to use it." She gave me that smug smile she always wears. The kind that says she thinks she's smarter than everyone else. Besides, she added, "You're never here. It's just sitting and used." I told her it didn't matter whether I was there every weekend or once a year. It was private property, clearly marked. I pointed out the metal post at the edge of the lot where the "private property, no trespassing" sign used to be. She rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, that old thing? It was falling down, and the wind probably took it. Not our fault." I glanced around and spotted the sign half buried behind a tree. Someone had clearly yanked it down and tossed it. And based on the dirt and scuffs, it had been stomped on too. I told her they needed to pack up and leave immediately. But she just chuckled and waved me off. "Relax. We'll be out of here by tomorrow. No harm done." She walked away as if the conversation was over. A few of her guests gave me awkward glances, but no one made a move. I could feel my blood boiling. This wasn't just disrespect. It was a challenge. Karen had been a thorn in my side ever since I moved into the neighborhood. I didn't join the HOA because I didn't see the point of paying for people like her to micromanage everything. My lot was technically outside of their jurisdiction, but that didn't stop Karen from trying to control it anyway. She'd complained to the city about my truck being parked too long on my own driveway. She tried to stop me from adding a dock by claiming it would ruin the lake's ecosystem. And now she had the audacity to host a weekend campout on my land, without permission, like it was her backyard? But I didn't shout or threaten. Instead, I turned around, walked back up the hill, and pulled out my phone. Because what Karen didn't know was that I had installed security cameras on the lot last month. After the last time some tools went missing, I made sure I had full coverage, solar-powered, motion detecting, and live streaming straight to my phone. Every move they made had been recorded since the moment they arrived. I had crystal clear footage of Karen directing traffic, handing out gear, and even yanking the sign out of the ground. I watched it in real time, frame by frame, and knew exactly what I had to do next. I called the sheriff's department and reported the trespassers. The deputy was polite and sympathetic, but he gave me a warning. Technically, he said, unless they're damaging property or refusing to leave after being told, it's considered a civil matter. We can come talk to them, but you'll need solid proof if you want to press charges or take it further." I thanked him and hung up. I knew right then that confronting Karen again wasn't going to work. She'd just play the innocent card or spin some story about misunderstanding boundaries. So instead of reacting with rage, I decided to let her dig her own hole deeper. I wanted her caught red-handed. I wanted the sheriff to see it with his own eyes. And most of all, I wanted her to realize that playing queen of the HOA didn't give her the right to rule over my land. This wasn't just about one weekend of camping. This was about standing up to people who think rules don't apply to them. As I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sun dip behind the lake, I could still hear their music drifting up from the trees. I smiled to myself. The trap was set. And it was only a matter of time before Karen walked right into it. After that outrageous weekend, I spent the next few days gathering everything I needed. Karen and her crew thought they could just waltz onto my property, disrespect it, and get away with it. But they had no idea that I had every second of their little campout recorded in high definition. Every word, every beer can tossed, every smug look Karen gave me, it was all neatly stored in my security cloud. And this time, I wasn't just going to complain. I was going to make it official. See, I had done some digging after that call with the deputy. I reviewed the county's property boundary maps, double-checked the deeds, and even pulled my original survey records. There was no mistake. My lake lot was privately owned, registered under my name, and clearly not under any HOA jurisdiction. I highlighted everything, printed copies, and placed them in a folder I labeled HOA Karen file. I wanted everything airtight, no loopholes, no excuses, no way for her to squirm out of this. What infuriated me most wasn't just the trespassing. It was her attitude. That arrogance, that entitlement, that sense that the world revolved around her and her social circle. She believed that just because she chaired the HOA board, she could do whatever she wanted, even on land that didn't belong to her. And worse, she didn't care how it affected others. She never apologized. Never showed an ounce of respect. So I decided to wait. I didn't approach her, didn't talk to her guests, didn't post about it in the community group. I kept completely silent. Because deep down, I had a feeling she would come back. She'd gotten away with it once. Why wouldn't she do it again? And I was right. The next Friday, just before sunset, I got the first motion alert on my phone. The camera near the tree line lit up. A black SUV pulled up with an out-of-state plate. A few minutes later, another car arrived. Then two more. By 7:30 p.m. 5 vehicles were parked near the lakefront, headlights off, doors swinging open, and voices echoing in the distance. I sat on my porch, watching the whole thing from my phone. They started setting up again, tents, tables, speakers, even portable lights. This time, they brought more gear than before, as if they were planning to stay the whole weekend. One guy dragged a kayak down to the water. Another set up a projector and screen like it was movie night. And right in the middle of it all was Karen. Same sunglasses, same wine tumbler, same smug look. She didn't even glance around to see if anyone was watching. It was clear she believed no one would challenge her. That she had somehow claimed my property through sheer ego alone. But this time, I was ready. I waited until they were fully set up, after the sun had gone down, after the campfire was lit, after Karen posted a photo of the lakeside escape on her social media, which I screenshot for evidence. Then I made the call. I spoke with the same sheriff's deputy as before. I gave him the time-stamped footage, the printed maps, and even a list of license plates from the parked cars. He didn't even hesitate. "All right," he said. "We're on the way." While I waited, I watched the live feed. Karen was laughing with her friends, clearly without a care in the world. Someone turned up the music, and I saw a few people dancing around the fire pit. It honestly looked like a music video being filmed illegally on my property. And the best part? My new "No Trespassing" signs, 4 of them, bright orange with reflective lettering, were clearly visible on camera. There was no way they could say they didn't see them. 45 minutes later, flashing lights broke through the darkness. 3 sheriff's cruisers rolled up slowly, tires crunching over the gravel path. People froze. Music stopped. Drinks were dropped. A man near the fire pit turned and ran toward the tents, like hiding in a sleeping bag was going to help. The deputies got out and began shining flashlights around the site. I drove down a few minutes later, parking at the top of the hill and walking calmly down toward the scene. One deputy met me halfway. "Everything here belongs to you?" he asked. I nodded and handed him the folder. He glanced at the maps, the screenshots, the security camera stills, and nodded. "Good. You've got everything." We walked down together, and as soon as Karen saw me with the deputy, her face drained of color. She looked stunned. Maybe it was because she realized I'd been watching the whole time, or maybe it was because she hadn't expected any consequences at all. Either way, she didn't look so smug now. "What is this?" she snapped. "Why are you here with the police?" The deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, you and your guests are trespassing on private property. You were warned. The owner has documented evidence, including footage of your previous visit and this current one." Karen stammered. "We didn't mean any harm. It's just a vacant lot. No one's using it." The deputy didn't budge. "That's not how property rights work. Vacant or not, it's not yours. And those "No Trespassing" signs are right there. You can't miss them." She turned to me, trying to change her tone. "Look, maybe we can talk about this? Work something out?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean like how you worked it out by inviting a dozen people onto my land without asking? Or by ripping down my sign?" Her lips tightened, and she looked away. The deputies began issuing citations. Some of her guests tried to argue, others just packed up silently. One guy muttered, "Man, she said this was all legit." Karen tried to protest again, but the deputy cut her off. "You've already been warned. You're lucky this isn't being pushed further. But if it happens again, it won't just be citations. It'll be arrests." As the guests shuffled back to their cars, embarrassed and irritated, I stood at the edge of the lot, arms crossed. The deputy nodded at me. "Well done," he said quietly. "You handled this the right way." I thanked him and watched as the last car pulled away, red taillights fading into the night. Karen was the last to leave. She didn't say a word. Just climbed into her SUV and drove off without so much as a glance. And as the dust settled and silence returned to my property, I finally smiled. This wasn't just about one weekend or one rude neighbor. It was about drawing the line, literally and legally, and showing people like Karen that they couldn't walk all over others just because they thought they could. The trap hadn't just worked. It had snapped shut perfectly. By the time Monday morning rolled around, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Word travels fast in small communities, especially when someone as high-profile as Karen gets humiliated in front of a crowd. Some people tried to act like they hadn't seen anything, but the truth was that everyone had heard about the sheriff showing up, the music cutting out mid-song, and Karen being forced to pack up her little lakeside fantasy while holding back tears of embarrassment. What they didn't know was that I wasn't finished yet. This wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. Karen needed to understand that just because she wore the crown of the HOA didn't mean she was above the law or immune to consequences. First thing that morning, I drove straight to the county administrative office with my HOA Karen file tucked under my arm. I met with the property records clerk, handed over the security footage, and explained the entire situation. The clerk shook his head and said, "This isn't the first time we've had trouble from HOA reps thinking they can manage private land. You've done everything right." From there, he connected me with the local code enforcement officer, who was especially interested in the unauthorized fire pit, the generator noise, and the fact that they dump trash in a protected runoff zone by the lake. That was strike 1, 2, and 3 right there. Afterward, I contacted the sheriff's office again to officially file a formal complaint for repeated trespassing. The deputy I had spoken with before was more than supportive. He even helped me file a restraining order against Karen, specifically banning her from setting foot on my property for any reason. That paperwork went straight to her mailbox with a little sheriff star printed right at the top. But I didn't stop there. You see, Karen's guests weren't just ordinary weekend campers. A few of them turned out to be local business owners, including one guy who ran a popular landscaping company. Another was a teacher at the local high school. When my video footage circulated among the neighborhood Facebook group, yep, I uploaded it with the caption, "Private property means private," it sparked a firestorm of reactions. Some of Karen's friends quickly started distancing themselves. The teacher? He issued a public apology and said he thought the event had been authorized. The business owner? He begged me to take the post down before it hurt his reputation. I didn't. Actions have consequences. Meanwhile, Karen stayed silent. For days, not a word. Not a phone call, not a text, not even a passive-aggressive HOA newsletter. Just radio silence. But I knew that silence was temporary. Karen wasn't the kind of person to stay down for long. She'd be back. And sure enough, by Thursday, she made her move. I got a letter in my mailbox. Typed, printed, and signed with that overly cursive signature of hers. It was dripping with fake politeness. She said she deeply regretted any misunderstanding and hoped we could resolve things amicably without further escalating the matter. She claimed her actions were motivated by a desire to foster community spirit, and that she did not realize the property was being monitored. That part actually made me laugh out loud. Because not realizing my land was monitored didn't make it any less trespassing. It just meant she wasn't smart enough to check. I didn't reply. Instead, I made a few upgrades. I installed new floodlights with motion sensors. I added a gate at the only vehicle access point, complete with a code lock and 2 security cameras watching it from different angles. And for good measure, I put up a large, reflective sign that read, "Private property, trespassers will be prosecuted. This land is under 24-hour video surveillance." I knew Karen saw it. I saw her car slow down one evening as she drove past. She didn't stop, didn't wave, just stared and kept going. Good. Let her stew in that. Then came the monthly HOA meeting. I didn't usually attend, since I wasn't technically a member, but this time I showed up, sat in the back, and waited. Karen was there, trying her best to act like nothing had happened. But the room was cold, icy, even. People whispered. A few glanced over at me. When it was time for community concerns, a man stood up and said, "I think we need to have a serious conversation about overreach and accountability, especially when it comes to how certain board members represent the HOA outside of their jurisdiction." Karen tried to cut him off, but the murmurs grew. Another person said, "You told us that land was unused. You didn't say it belonged to someone else." Someone else chimed in, "It's not just embarrassing, it's illegal." Karen's face flushed red. She tried to explain, to spin it, to say it was all a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. The board voted to suspend her authority to act unilaterally on community matters. That meant no more Karen campaigns, no more unauthorized events, and, best of all, no more meddling in things that didn't concern her. She was still on the board, technically, but she had lost the influence she loved so much. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to me and thanked me. One guy said, "She's been pushing people around for years. You're the first one who stood your ground." Another offered to help me put up a new fence if I ever needed it. It felt good, real good, not just because I got justice, but because people finally saw through the act. They realized that Karen's version of community leadership was just control disguised as kindness. I walked back to my truck that night, the warm breeze off the lake following me down the road. I looked over at my land. Quiet, peaceful, exactly how it should be. No tents. No noise. Just moonlight glinting off the water and the sound of frogs chirping in the distance. Karen had thought she could take advantage of me because I stayed quiet. Because I didn't show up to meetings. Because I wasn't part of her little HOA kingdom. But what she didn't realize was that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means patience. And when the time comes, a patient man can set the perfect trap. One that doesn't just catch trespassers, but shows the whole neighborhood exactly who they are. Weeks passed, and while the buzz around Karen's humiliating downfall started to settle, the changes around the neighborhood were anything but quiet. The HOA board, still reeling from the backlash of her little, lakeside takeover, had begun quietly restructuring their procedures. Now, any event, even something as small as a community barbecue, needed board-wide approval and written documentation. That was their way of making sure another, Karen-style stunt never happened again. As for me, I was finally able to enjoy my lake lot in the way I'd always intended, peacefully, privately, and without the sound of someone else's portable speaker thumping through the woods. But something in me had changed too. What started as frustration had turned into something deeper, a need to protect not just my property, but the principle of it all. People like Karen believe they can rewrite rules as they go, wrap disrespect in charm, and walk away clean. Not anymore. That weekend, I decided to finally do what I'd put off for over a year. I brought in a local contractor and started building a small dock. Nothing fancy, just a wooden platform with enough space for a chair, a tackle box, and my thoughts. The moment the first beam hit the ground, I felt something shift. That land, once threatened by Karen's entitlement, was now becoming mine in every visible way. I also added 2 motion-sensitive trail cameras deeper into the trees, just in case she or anyone else got bold again. Not because I was scared, because I was done being caught off guard. I even registered a private property warning with the county office, so in the future, anyone claiming they didn't know would be met with public documentation proving otherwise. But even with all these safeguards, I still wondered if Karen had truly learned her lesson. She had kept a low profile ever since that HOA meeting, but silence from someone like her isn't always peace, it's often strategy. And sure enough, I got my answer a few weeks later. I was walking back from the lake one afternoon when my neighbor Alan, an older guy with a calm voice and a sharp memory, waved me over. "Thought you should know," he said. "Karen's been talking to a couple of new board members. Trying to spin the story. Saying you overreacted and made her look bad on purpose." I couldn't help but chuckle. Of course she was. It wasn't enough that she trespassed, embarrassed herself in front of the whole neighborhood, and nearly got cited again, she still wanted to play the victim. I thanked Alan and told him not to worry. I already had my next move planned. I went back home, sat down with my laptop, and began compiling every bit of documentation I had. The security footage, the police report, screenshots of her social media post about the lake weekend, and even her handwritten letter full of backpedaling. I didn't post it publicly, not yet, but I made sure it was stored, sorted, and ready. Because if she tried to twist the narrative again, I wasn't going to argue. I was going to present the truth. Plain, clear, and irrefutable. Interestingly enough, it never came to that. Something must have changed in Karen's world, because suddenly, her influence started slipping. The people she used to boss around began pushing back. A group of younger homeowners got together and proposed new bylaws for the HOA, ones that required term limits for board members and increased transparency on how dues were being spent. It passed in the very next vote. Karen didn't lose her board seat right away, but she lost control. And that, for someone like her, was worse than being removed entirely. Now, when I go down to the lake, it's quiet again. Peaceful. I sit on my dock, throw out a line, and watch the sun glint off the water like nothing had ever disturbed it. But every once in a while, I see her car pass by on the main road. She never stops. Never makes eye contact. Just keeps driving, slower than usual, like she's remembering something she wishes she could erase. And I don't blame her. If I were her, I'd want to forget that moment too. The moment the sheriff stepped out of his car, the moment the guests went silent, the moment the trap she'd never seen coming snapped shut around her so tight she had no room left to talk her way out. Looking back, it wasn't just about one incident or one bad neighbor. It was about finally drawing a line. People like Karen thrive when others stay silent, when they shrug and say, "It's not worth the fight." But sometimes, it is worth it. Sometimes, it's the principle that matters more than the inconvenience. Because when you let people walk over the line once, they'll do it again. And again. Until your land, your rights, your peace, don't feel like yours anymore. Since then, I've had more than a few neighbors ask how I kept my cool through it all. How I didn't lose my temper or storm the HOA meetings yelling. I tell them the same thing every time: I set the trap. I waited. And I let her walk right into it. That's the secret. Patience and proof. Let them show everyone exactly who they are. You don't need to make a scene when you've got the truth and time on your side. And when that moment comes, when the truth is so loud it can't be denied, you'll get to watch as the ones who thought they held all the power freeze in place, realizing the only thing they've trapped is themselves. Now, my lake lot stands as a symbol of what happens when you stand your ground, not with shouting, but with strategy. Karen's reign may have ended in embarrassment, but for me, it was a beginning. A reminder that no matter how loud or powerful someone seems, respect for boundaries always wins in the end.